yeah, we today we're talking about data citizens and the different data management frameworks. Um, so this is the section now. When I refer to a data citizen, I'm really sort of dealing with the data stewards, uh, and the define those who define data, those who produce data, and a lot of the times those who use the data, and that includes the data scientists as well. So it's those people that are now right at the value stage of the data lifecycle where we can use and enable data. Okay. And what I'm trying to do now is trying to show how our data citizens help us with all of these different data management frameworks. Okay, so this was that slide that I did last week. I've added a few things. For example, I just realized as well that Saudi has over and above all of these other things like NORA and NDI and DMBOK and NDMO and reference, they've also got of course, they've got an AI, responsible AI and ethical AI framework as well. So those guys have really got so many different frameworks that they have to work together. Um, the important thing is that the DCAM is that we're talking about is really sitting at this business architecture level. So we can see here stakeholders, value propositions, value streams, and capabilities. That's where DCAM is helping us out. And then we have the other maturity frameworks like the NDI, Gartner, TDWI, CMMI, that focus on the effectiveness of the data management procedures that help us manage and govern the data. Okay, so there's that separation. And what we can see here is this is the BizBoK with the business architecture, and it comes all the way down to business processes, which gives us an overlap with the DMBOK, where the DMBOK starts to introduce the processes by discipline, by dimension, what's the best practice, what's the policy, and the DMBOK takes us down along here all the way to artifact. And then we've got things like scorecards and guidelines and things like that. And then we've got something that NIST have introduced. This is the AI risk management framework, and it's predominantly around the technology and the use of technology. And I'm going to give you some examples of that. So what is nice, and I'm hoping to show you that towards the end, is that you can see that we've got links from DCAM all the way through to the policies and procedures, all the way through to the technology side and the AI governance side. So we have to keep on bringing these things together and make sure that we're covering all of the different areas. And of course, it depends on what's appropriate in your environment, what suits you. So yes, you can bring the DCAM in and you can adjust it and apply the framework to yourself. And it needs to work for you. Okay, so you need to see what are you doing and how do you apply it. Okay, so I wanted to go a little bit around the curve today, and I felt that I have been battling for the last 5 or 6 weeks in terms of this question of what is and why do we need AI governance? I'm sure some of you have seen that that video that John Bottega put out in EDM Council, and he's basically saying we should have one governance, one area that deals with it, and predominantly I'm in agreement with it. And I think what we need to recognize is that the area of governance that doesn't fall into the data area is the technology governance. Okay, so how do we govern technology? Yes, Ben, I saw your hand was up and I didn't.
I was just going to ask one question about the earlier slide about your kind of meta model, whether that was based on anything. So just, you got stakeholders, value proposition, value streams, some of that vernacular or terminology is familiar based on, BizBoK and some of the frameworks, but is that your own kind of meta model, or is that sort of based on something?
No, that comes from the BizBoK. So the BizBoK will talk
Right.
about these different elements that need to be produced, and almost an order in which you work through it. Now, interestingly
All the
enough,
way down?
no,
All
it
the way
stops at
down? Is
business
that all BizBoK?
process. It stops at business
Yeah, that's
process.
what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Okay.
these below this come from research and academic disciplines. So if you have data management as a discipline in academia, then it's discipline, dimension, practice, policy, and then we get the DMBOK structure, which goes policy, framework, procedure, and then technology.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good question. Okay. All right. So then
can I ask just on the AI
Sure.
governance then, when you said in one place, do you mean data governance and AI governance in one place, or AI
So I'm actually going to position it for you now, Ben. I'm going to get there. So let's talk about it at that
Sorry.
time. No problem. Okay, so what I wanted to chat through with you is when I got to Saudi for the first time, there was a department for a data management office, and there was a department for digital transformation. Everybody's talking about digital transformation. And I really battled to understand what was going on between these two different departments. And one day they came to me to said, "Oh, we need a data strategy." And I said, "Sorry, why are you producing a data strategy?" So I said, "Well, that's part of what we need to do." And after a while, we actually merged the different departments into one department where we had the DMO press the digital transformation and try to bring these worlds together. Now, that was the first time that I had to spend time trying to work out what is the overlap and how do we connect these dots. Now, I've just presented something here for you in terms of trying to balance this data versus digital. Okay, now what we have been living in the past, really before data management became a thing, a lot of it was around application centric, right? Where data is just the raw material and digital was the value engine. Digital was the application that was automating for the business. They were building all the applications, and then we were battling in the back end to actually go and get all the data out of these applications and build the data warehouses. So we had to do that consolidation. Then the DMBOK came along. I don't think it's been very successful in the situation. They said, we need to go to data centric, where data is central and digital is infrastructure. And they use that TOGAF framework of business data application IT or technology, and basically saying that it comes from business requirements, then it goes to data, then you must choose the application that delivers the data, and then you choose the technology that runs the application. Now, a lot of people are seeing that structure, but I still haven't seen it being very effective in many organizations. Typically because the CIO is so strong. They've been there for a long time. They've got lots of reputational credit, and the CDO doesn't really. So they tend to have the ear, and they tend to have the basically the relationships with the business. Then lately we've been going into what's referred to as digital first. Okay, where yes, data is the foundation and quality is critical, but it's the digital platform, the API platform that's leveraging data for insights and direction. Okay, so that sort of came about, and now I believe it's been surpassed by digital transformation. And then they introduced AI and AI governance. And basically they're saying that digital is going beyond the clean data, and that's AI and AI governance. So basically, the AI and the AI governance, basically AI governance is looking after the life cycle of the model. Once the model's been built and everything like that, AI governance gets involved and manages the life cycle where it takes it into production or takes it out of production, depending on the quality of recommendations. Okay. So AI is looking at the systems, AI governance, sorry, is looking at the systems and the model management or the lifecycle management, whereas data governance is focusing on the accountableness, the accountability, the trustworthiness, and the understandable of the data. Okay, so that's sort of where we getting into at this stage. Now, these are just quick descriptions of what I had, so I won't spend too much time there. Really just pointing out that and the reason everybody's justifying AI governance is saying it's going beyond data that's understandable, data that's clean, into systems that are driving digital decision. So the system part of it is bringing the technology together. So now we're almost seeing this unification of data and digital, data and technology. Okay. And they are having to take care of the AI decision. So can they explain it? Is it fair? Does it have any ethical issues? Now, this is where we start overlapping with data governance, where when we build a model in the beginning, we have to do an ethical impact assessment and a privacy impact assessment to say, is this what we're trying to take on now? Is it appropriate from an ethics point of view? Now, once that model's built and the data is running, a lot of the times it's been managed by AI governance. That's what people are suggesting. Okay. Now, at the same time, they basically saying that without that governance, the models and the AI systems become unaccountable. They make decisions, they give answers to customers, and we run into certain challenges. Okay. So we need to balance this data versus digital. When people talk, it's important, especially when you talk about a digital strategy or an IT strategy. Where does the CIO position themselves? Are they positioning themselves as digital first? Are they doing it as digital transformation? Where do they see themselves fitting in? And typically, we then have to connect, depending on what the relationship is we connect the AI, the data and the data management and the data governance into that strategy. Okay. So business doesn't just become digital, it must make these decisions based on informed data and deliver the appropriate value. Okay. So we got to get this balance right, and I found that helpful, and I don't know, about 3 years ago, everything became digital transformation, and I kept on thinking, well, what's happened to data management? What's happening to all the different data transformations that we had to bring in? All of a sudden, it was being run by a different department. I don't know how many of you have experienced that or have had to deal with digital transformation. Andrew, is that something that I'm sure you've picked up that in ANZ or I can't hear you, Andrew?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
You can hear me now. Sorry, I was just mucking around with my and yeah, yeah. Look, I've encountered my fair share of politics between
Yeah,
data, digital, and technology. I mean, it sort of becomes like a it's I mean, there's silos, right, in any
yeah,
organization, and that they struggle to organizations struggle with how to bring their silos together and make it cohesive. Um,
right.
I'm not sure if we're there yet in terms of where all this is going to land. It's in, there's differences in models, and then there's the issue of federated versus central,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and I mean, it's complicated. I think it's a complicated relationship, and I think organisations are going to be tackling that with some difficulty going forward.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
100% correct, but I think it's very helpful for us to, first of all, when we do get into that organization, is, what is the CIO driving? Is he driving application centric? Is he driving digital first, or is he driving digital transformation? Because if he's driving application centric, and I've actually heard a CIO about 2 years ago that he basically said to me, Howard, I don't know what fuss you're making here. Basically, we excrete data. We, the data is our exhaust. That's what we give off. We give off data, and it's like, okay. So the way in which the CIO perceives you is quite important. Yes, Ben, I saw your hand was up.
Oh, just a comment, really. I mean, application centric versus data centric reminds me a little bit of Dave McCone's work.
Yes.
And I've found that digital can often be a little bit esoteric. One of the hardest parts I've found in these programs is the organizational change management and sort of literacy development. And the value of data is kind of irrefutable. It doesn't matter who the stakeholder is. It doesn't matter whether on the business side or on the IT side, that most of the time there's violent agreement around the value of data. Whereas I find with digital, it's more esoteric and harder to anchor change. So I'm kind of often repurposing transformation or digital programs and sort of trying to drive data centricity, because it's something that everyone in an organization relates to. It's just a question of what it's worth and how do we deliver on that value.
Okay. So I'm hoping now that we're going to these next two slides where we can start seeing some of the relationships that we build between the two. So this is a best practice come success factor from an AI governance point of view. And when I went through these top things that make it successful, the technology is all over here. So and someone actually made a comparison. Oh, I don't know what happened. My presentation just disappeared. Sorry. So I hope I've got everything there. Okay, one moment. Sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so when we go into this area, this is what I was talking about. We see that it's littered with technology. Technology is all over the place. And the comparison was that this is almost like cybersecurity, where the governance is around the risk and the technology, the systems that are being developed. That's where that AI governance comes into place, because those systems or automated areas of recommendations, digital decisioning, these things are making decisions all the time. Of course, a lot of it depends on where the human is in the loop, or if they feel the human should be in the loop. But that's the sort of comparison that I like to bring up, and where I start seeing AI governance playing a role is we building these applications. They're being developed by software developers, they're being developed by technology aspects, and they're creating an automated system. If we think of a customer data platform, if we think of some of the Spotify things that are constantly recommending the things, yes, there's data underneath there, but the recommendations are what's driving that system. Okay, so that there I can see, okay, I get it. I understand for this situation why you need AI governance and the difference between AI governance and data governance. But that AI environment still requires the data to be clean. So basically, the summary is AI governance delivers guardrails for the organizations to get business value from initiatives, whilst ensuring that the AI tools and systems remain safe and ethical with the decisions that they are making. So, I mean, if we do look at what Spotify does or any marketing customer data platform does with recommendations, it's that integration with the customer behavior and the customer to say, but if you look at this music, or you do this or you do that, they are the ones that are delivering that business value. They're keeping the customer engaged. Okay, so just a comparison of, and I think what's important for us is this clarity of intersection and distinction. So there are areas that we intersect on, and I believe that it's the ethics and that initial model development that we have this intersection with. And then once that model's up and running and in production, then you'll typically get AI governance taking over and understanding the impact of what the system is doing, where it's headed, and what decisions are being made. Okay, so we need to understand this intersection. We need to look at the risks and the promise of AI. So that's where I started finding NIST coming into play, and we all know NIST from a security point of view, and it's really good at risk management. And so hopefully I'm going to show you just now about the framework that they've developed that we can apply within our organizations. Okay, so the important thing is that these applications or AI systems can then do have the ability to drive extraordinary progress and advancements and transformations within the business. We really just look at this hyper personalization, which means that we're no longer personalizing our systems according to personas, but we're personalizing our systems according to individuals. And these systems are able to change the behavior and interact with the customer depending on how they behave, not how their persona behaves. Okay, but it also has the potential to exacerbate the risks. So we now have to bring in this balanced equation. Okay, so we've got dangers of unleashing AI, the outcomes, the biased models, the inaccurate predictions, and the reputational risk. And so data governance or AI governance needs to be constantly listening to and understanding the impact that they're having on our customers. And it's not just customers, it could be stakeholders, wherever it is. That this is the area that AI governance focuses on. So when we look at just some other things about AI models and LLMs, I don't know about you, but just lately in terms of working with LLMs, and that's part of what the presentation is going to be on the 24th, is I've found a way of integrating data management policies and procedures into a chatbot and an LLM using a RAG. So just taking all of my policies and procedures, feeding it into a RAG, and then allowing the business people or the data steward to say, okay, what should I be doing here? What's the next step? What's the process? And what is the policy set, or what is the standard? So that's been amazing how we can start integrating and talking about all of the data. So now it's not just most of our focus sitting on structured and semi-structured. We got to be focusing on everything. We've got to have good quality, unstructured data. We can't have, for example, when I do that chatbot, I can't have an old procedure sitting in the RAG. Okay, like then they're going to get confusing results in terms of what should they do. All right, so data is key to sustainable and generative AI. We need to be looking at the long-term perspective. So success depends on steady stream of quality governed data. So as we adding more and more document and content to our RAGs and LLMs, this is a steady stream. It's not going to end, or we're not going to be able to say, okay, this is it. This is all the content we need, and it's going to be growing at an ongoing rate. So connecting AI and data governance, we need to be aligned. We need to understand where we have these almost Venn diagrams of intersections, and then when do they take over, and where do we operate it? Okay. So there's just some of the comments. So the intersection is basically the AI is only as good as the data. All right. So we've experienced this with BI. If we have bad quality data coming in, well, we're going to have bad quality AI. Okay, and BI. So it doesn't matter where you're sitting. This lesson we learned with BI is going to feed into the AI systems, and it's happening already. We see that happening. Okay, so data governance directly influences the effectiveness of AI governance. So AI governance, people are going to be fighting all sorts of fires if we've got biases in our model that was set up, was trained incorrectly, it's been fed with the wrong data. It just gets worse and worse for the AI people because they're just seeing the negative effect and the impact of all this bad data on our customers or our stakeholders. Okay, so for me, AI ensures that we get alignment of system behavior. Are the recommendations working appropriately? Just the engagement with the customer, is it operating effectively? It's linking it into day-to-day operations. So if we look at digital decisioning, which is pure AI systems, and they're making those decisions very quickly, very fast, that's an area that it's all up to the system. It's the digital side that's making those decisions. And of course, they need to manage the life cycle. So when do we get to a point where we're saying, pull this model out of production because it's constantly giving the wrong advice? And AI governance takes care of that. So Ben, I wanted to just pause here and almost say to you that this is sort of where we differentiate between AI governance and data governance. I don't know if this helps you.
No, it's great. It's great. It's
okay.
There's a lot of conversations around AI, but that's a lovely, clear delineation. So thank you.
Yeah. So it helps me almost say, okay, they're not going to come in and govern my data. They expect clean, trustworthy, ethical data handling up front, the model design and things like that, and then the right quality. They take over in terms of understanding the decision quality, the ethical direction, the explainability, the oversight of the system, and it's not about the data. Maybe just to pause there, Andrew, any comments from you or anybody else? Does anyone like to comment on this?
Can I ask a question, Howard?
Sure.
Sorry, just is it useful to think of AI as more of an application for the data? You know,
100%. Yeah.
So
it's data, it's application and technology. So 100%. So
I think of something like DCAM, where applications sit outside the data control environment.
Correct, and that allows us, and I'm going to show you how we don't need to go and change the DCAM frisbee to bring AI in there, right? The analytics management, the core 8 will deal with all of that stuff with what we have. And I think that's the nature of a business capability, is that it's not constantly changing every single time we have a new thing. Shucks, we've got to go and rewrite the new version of DCAM. If we do that, we haven't got the right set of capabilities. They're just too unstable. Andrew?
That's what John Batavia was saying back at the NASDAQ video that he recorded back in January, February, that people are gravitating to AI governance, but they're forgetting that, well, not forgetting, they need to give thought to the fact that AI is a software engine that relies on a process and a data feed to create its outcome. So it's no different to any other technology stack that we've got. It's just another thing.
Yeah.
And the foundations need to be that you've got to have your data foundations correct and your business processes correct, aligned to that. So anyway.
Yeah. Great.
And but what I do like though, Howard, is that you very elegantly, described it in a stack, as a stack.
Yeah.
And it's all on one page, essentially on one page. So it makes it very clear for us to start referencing that in our thought pieces going forward. I think that's really very powerful.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, William.
So one of the major differences for me is that when you're looking at applications, you can reload data, and it can be bad data. You can reload good, clean data. That application wouldn't have been affected by that data at all. Yep. Whereas with AI, it's going to learn from that bad data. And then when you put the new good data in, it's going to apply what it learned, which was bad,
Correct.
to what was good. And it's going to still skew it.
Yeah.
And so I think that the effort on quality now needs a double gate. Previously, we just needed to have a single gate, and we could say, okay, that's fine. We'll catch it. If it's wrong later, we'll bring it back. We'll redo it.
Right.
You can't do a redo with AI.
Well, and I'm actually going to show you that in when I build the chatbot, William, where so it's interesting. The RAG sits on top of the LLM. Okay. Now the LLM sits on top of ChatGPT. Now, when I build my RAG, I can control the content that will be providing the answers. Okay, so I can take out a document and I can rebuild the vector database on the new set of documents. So I've got lots of options to play with when it comes to LLMs and RAG. So there are ways of extracting biased content and content that's wrong. Okay, so there's that engagement that you do. But you're right. So, for example, I mean, a vector database is very close to a neural network, that an LLM, and that thing just keeps on growing. And when you got problems, then what do you do? How do you get rid of that? What we call shucks, has just gone out of my head now. Hallucination. So is the hallucination based on incorrect data, or is on ambiguities, or is the hallucination based on incorrect prompting, or whatever it is? That's where we need to work on that as well. Okay. So yeah, model drift, certainly, Carl, that's one of the things that AI governance would constantly look at. And almost what we'd see there is a case of when they start seeing that our recommendations are not working, then what the root cause may be model drift, and they would have to check to see whether the correlations between, or the correlations of whether it's positive or negative or whatever it is between the different features, is that still hanging up and hanging together? Okay. Does AI require super vigilant lineage? 100%. So that, and I'm actually going to show you, Carl, I think it was Carl. I'm going to show you that you can't just get data from anywhere, right? You have to be very controlled as to how that data comes in and feeds that system. And yeah, I think Ben's answering that as well. It's that regulatory obligation. But one of the things that data governance should be doing is to say, where are our trusted sources, and are we getting the data from the right source? That's the critical role that data governance plays. That basically when the AI system is working off our data product, we've done a lot of that work to ensure, and we can then answer all these questions at that time, right? To say, well, where did you get this data? Where did the source come from? Okay. Any other questions? All right. So then there's this AI and data management, and this is one of the things that I would like to suggest to you that we need to do is, can we bring data management into the TOGAF and the BizBark as a value-driven discipline? How do we get it in there? I know it is there already, but I don't believe that lots of businesses actually recognize that data management is a business discipline. Now, are you able to convince your business? And if not, what are you battling with? If you were, then how did you go about it? That would be interesting to hear your feedback. Okay, now this is Bill Scamoso. He published an article that Andrew and Guy really got hold of, and he said, guys, we have to do something about the challenges we are facing on the data side. So he refers to it as data cascades. And I'm going to give you an example, but basically he's saying that everybody is jumping onto doing the model work, the analytics practitioner, and not the data work. And they are saying is we got to get more control, more governance on the data side, more skills to ensure that the models are correct. Okay, so basically this is what he's talking about, where this is the model work, and then this is the data work. Okay, and we've got this overlap between on the models and some of the training, and I'm trying to position AI governance here at the constant evaluation and deployment of the models. Okay, so that's the sort of leg that they're fitting on. Okay, observations from Google, basically saying that data issues, 92% of the problems, and they are pervasive and they never go away, are coming from data quality, data lineage, data understandability. That's where our core problems are coming on. Okay. Now, the biggest problem is that they are invisible. They are delayed, so they always come out once the system is in production. And we know that handling problems in production is probably the most expensive challenge that we can deal with. And it would be nice if we could handle them in design or whatever it is. So these are the ones that we need to be worried about. Okay, so basically what Andrew and Guy is saying is that, yes, AI is the most powerful discipline. That's the thing that's really changing stuff. But AI ability depends on high quality, unbiased data. So if we don't get this right, then that AI's ability is retarded. Basically, it's not going to deliver for the business that it's required. Okay. Our data management must be focused on delivering the data, manufacturing trustworthy data. That's what our production line is all about. That's what data management is all about, is getting the trustworthy data for the models to run and deliver that business value. Okay, so basically we're going through this process of recognizing that data management is the most important, because if we fail on data management, then the AI and everything's going to go down the tubes. Okay, so the important things on from a data management point of view that they focus on is data quality, metadata management, and there are some aspects of reference and master data, basically identifying that it's our customer, it is our product, especially when you get into social data. We need the reference and master data to help us identify what we're dealing with, matching, merging, and bringing it all together. And then AI is focusing on the risk, the bias, and the responsible data handling. Okay. So this is just a value creation flywheel. When to bring about that business information, we need to engineer, we need to do data value engineering, and then we create the data science, and then they do the feature engineering. So just a wheel that we need to be aware of is what is it that data science are bringing to the table? All right, they are the ones that are focusing on the important features of the system to help them make decisions. So, I mean, I remember working with the central bank, and we did some analysis around GDP and all of the factors that brought this into play. Okay, so Kira's survivorship fit in. Okay, Kira, so yeah, that's within the master data. For example, when you do a match and a merge, what can happen is that certain records are rejected, and those records can be reinstated at a later stage. So this match merge is where survivorship comes into play. Okay. So if we're bringing in new data into the environment, new customers, is this a new customer that AI has found, or is it an existing customer? And then what do we do in that scenario? Kira, does that answer your question?
It does. It does. I was just wondering why you wouldn't put it as matching, merging, and then another block for survivorship, because that's
Okay. So what you can have is there's different ways of doing the merging strategy. Okay. So if you look at the DMBOK, they talk about match and merge, and they don't highlight survivorship as separate from merging. Now, what you can have is a merge with a replace or a merge with a link. Okay. And basically what you can do is, instead of trying to force everything into one record, you can just create a set of records that come from the different systems that relate to the same customer. And so they merged in metadata, they're not really merged in the row. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense, because you could keep the links.
Yeah. Now, what happens is, let's say, for example, we matched a new customer coming in, but it was actually an old customer. Then what we have to do is, to be able to roll that back, we created a new customer, or we created whatever it was, or we updated the wrong customer. We have to roll back and undo what the merging did and then bring it back again. Okay, so that's another complexity that we bring with match and merge. Okay, so now let's go to the DMBOK side of it, and the DCAM. So I actually got this from the DCAM training that Ben gave me. And when I saw this, I said, this helps me really position and explain to people where the different things fit in. So I can see, this is clear: data governance, data stewardship. Okay, this is our job. Dealing with new data requests, dealing with data, we look after the data, and it's data governance, data stewardship, be it technical or business. This is where we sit in. Now, this outcome, so when a system makes a decision, we need the data stewards to look at that decision and say, was that a right decision? Can we explain that decision? Or did we make a mistake? And if we made a mistake, then we would give that feedback back to the data scientists, the analytics people that are working on it. Okay, so this is sort of where the governance is coming in, but the data scientists are operating, and this is almost in production. The models are running, and then we've got the AI governance sitting here as well. So I really like the slide that the EDM Council has produced, to be able to say, okay, this is how I break down this whole decision-making cycle. And sort of want to pause here just for any discussion around the positioning of the different roles around AI governance and stakeholders and data governance and data stewards. Maybe start with Ben. Ben, is that something that...
One comment I'd make is that high quality data, does get used for decision support until the data becomes trusted, in which case it can be used for automation. Once there's confidence around the data, and that's perhaps a linkage into, where you've got data across to the analytics techniques, or back into the technology, where you're starting to introduce organizational automation. It's more just a supplemental comment, but I like the separation of AI governance and data governance and stewardship.
Okay. Now, you bring about a very important point, and whenever it comes to this decisioning, and there are different, I use the Cynefin diagram or Cynefin framework to understand the state of my data and information. So are we talking about known questions, known answers, and that's where digital decisioning comes in, where the system can actually make those decisions. So when you refer to that quality, Ben, I go a little bit further to say, if I truly know cause and effect, and I've got known questions, known answers, and it's almost like a recipe, I can go into that digital decisioning. Okay, but I got to keep on checking to see whether there's any drift or model drift that may introduce a factor that I'm no longer aware of. Okay.
And traceability. I mean,
Yes.
I think sometimes you can't, I've worked in large scale power networks, for example, or electricity networks where you can't explain to your regulator that the computer decided or the model decided to switch the network off.
Right.
That's where I think something you touched on before, but semantic modeling can be helpful, across multiple data sets, but can also be used for reasoning, which is explainable.
Right.
Or inferencing.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you. Let me talk, William, I see your hands up.
Yeah. So on my side, the big challenge that we face is changing context, right? If the context changes and the model is set for a previous context, it's going to, again, offset you in the wrong direction. The model might be perfectly fine for earlier. And if that context changes rapidly, that's where we're going to run into some problems. If it's nice and slow changing and the business is just going to change slowly, that's fine. Otherwise, what happens is that your model is going to get really, really big with so many rules to try and deal with contextual changes. And I'm not quite sure if we're going to have the data quality on all of those contextual areas.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot of the times that's what we refer to as that feature engineering, William, is, I mean, the features come from the context, right? So the features that we work on, what the models are trying to do is, let's say we've got thousands and thousands of different variables. Each variable could be a feature. Then what has to be done is, according to the training, we have to be able to say, these are the features that impact the decision making. Okay. Now, as you rightly say, if there's a drift or a change, okay, then all of a sudden, what we thought was causation is now correlation, and it's not actually working anymore. Okay, so we drop into that state of the information. So William, those features and the relationships between the features are dependent on the context, and they can change. And this is what these data scientists are doing all the time, is focusing on that feature engineering to confirm that they've got the right relationship. Okay, but they keep on adding it to the system.
Is this a new role that's likely to enter into this, that we've got to have these people that understand how this works, really smart?
Oh, yeah. Now,
that's a new role that doesn't really exist at the moment.
It does, because a lot of the times the statisticians have been doing that. They constantly looking at how these features relate to each other. But what can happen is we can bring about a new context, a new environment, and that starts to change. And because the model wasn't trained on that environment, then we pick up some problems. But the statistics and the associations are well understood. Okay, the technique. I'm not saying that the feature,
the technique would be there, but you would probably need some kind of a data QA role. In the past, we used to have the person who does the job and then the supervisor. You're probably going to need to bring a supervisor back in to make sure that.
But this is what's happening here. This is this loop here, William, is they're looking at the decisions, they're analyzing the decisions, they're analyzing the impact of those decisions, and recognizing that the model is not doing it anymore, is not working anymore, and then they give it back. So that loop goes on forever. It never ends.
So would you then say that the data stewards are going to fulfill that function over and above their existing functions specifically?
Now, this is where I'm referring this is where I'm referring to user data stewards and domain data stewards. So domain data steward would, as an example, be a customer. These people understand everything about a customer, and they are the ones that are looking at that decision, working in the business and saying, this is not working, this is wrong. The model's
Yes, no,
making
100% agreed with that. But I'm referring to on the AI side. We
Yeah,
don't really have a layout nicely of all the roles that are required for artificial intelligence.
Yeah, this is part of the analytics model. So this framework actually is fitting into the DCAM analytics management. Okay, but
Cool.
let me get to the other people, and I'll come back. Andrew?
This is an observation that I've just heard a lot about roles. So
Yeah.
this is an X and Y. This is an X and Y. It's a two-dimensional diagram, but there's a third dimension in the Z-axis, which is the roles and accountability model, and a
Right.
RACI that sits
Right.
inside the business that actually
Agreed.
maps to this.
Agreed.
And
100%.
that when you add that in, it becomes quite complex.
Yeah.
Because an organization needs to work out who's responsible for what.
Right.
And it depends on the data domain as well, right? And,
Right.
And I
But the
think
nice thing about it is that if you already identifying the using data stewards that are focusing on those decisions, so we're going to have many of them. They're going to have that responsibility. So if we go back to Bob Siner's approach of, these people are already doing that work. They're already looking at using that data. But then we also supplement them with domain data stewards. So those are the subject experts that happen across all business processes within the organization for a certain subject.
Yeah, and I think the secret sauce for us as a community is working out the organizational change management that goes and fits in with this.
Right. Agreed.
Because organizations are not geared up to do this stuff right now.
100%. Yeah, and a lot of the people are saying the biggest problem that AI governance has is that it's almost like a completely new set of operating models, a new set of people, new set of layers that are coming in that they are battling to go from the scratch. But let me go to Umbando. Yes, sir.
Yes, Howard. Sorry, you might have talked about it, but for some time I've been confusing feature
engineering. Yeah,
feature engineering. Yes, and dark data.
Dark data. Oh,
yes.
Okay. Dark data, this most simplistic version of the dark data is basically it's ungoverned data.
Okay.
Dark data is we're just not looking after it. It's just growing. It's causing all sorts of problems and having all sorts of impact on us. That's the way in which people are using dark data. It's just we just don't see it. It's become invisible.
Any governance?
It's basically not being governed. Dark data that's not being governed.
Okay.
It's like a whole lot of the stuff that sits in your shared folders and your SharePoint thing that people are just dumping stuff in and Teams and things like that. That's all the stuff that's sitting there, and we're trying to get hold of it with AI and analysis. Stephen, I saw your video come on. Do you have a question or you okay? Great. Okay, so this is the DCAM capabilities for analytics management. Okay, now please remember this is version 2, version 3. We're not sure. We had some chats yesterday, but I just wanted to show you a mapping. Now, what's so important about analytics mapping is, can you see they've got alignment with business data management strategy? The function has been established, the data architecture is aligned, the data quality has been aligned, the platforms are approached, and then we have this model operationalization, and then as Andrew was talking about the culture and the education. So what is quite amazing about the analytics management is that it's really big. The number of artifacts that you need to create, the number of capabilities. This is a big area. That section on the model is really big, and interestingly enough, when I do a mapping from the DCAM to the DMBOK across all of these analytical artifacts and stuff like that, I just about get everything in the DMBOK coming into this one section, this analytics management on DCAM. It's got everything from strategy to stakeholders to vision statements, and then it goes into operating models, it goes into training, it goes into the governance. It's bringing everything in. So I found it when I went through every single area, this was probably the hardest section to map to the DMBOK because it brought everything together. Now, I'm a little bit concerned about it because, I mean, does it need to be doing all of this stuff? Or, I mean, it's even in some cases bringing in some of the policies that need to be about. Yes, the policies are part of data governance, but it brings in that of the different processes. Okay.
It's about it's about the finished product. And when it comes at the end of the production line, it's all of those things coming to one delivered product at a point.
So,
I mean,
Andrew,
that's
I
why
agree with you. I would suggest and support you by saying, Howard, when you're trying to sell this to the executive level, they need to understand what they're buying, and they're not just buying analytics, some report that they're getting. They've got to buy all of this.
But where we have to be careful, William, is that, remember, this is a component of the entire DCAM Frisbee, right? So remember, this is just one element, and we've got all of these other aspects sitting here as well.
No, what you say is right. So process-wise, when you're looking at DCAM, you're talking to the executive layer about how they're supposed to actually mature their business.
Yeah.
But when you are talking about getting the business to the point whereby they've got everything in place, then you've got to put data governance up long before you even get to analytics.
That's not what I'm saying.
Sorry,
William, that's not what I'm saying. Basically, if we look at that Frisbee, okay, there's compartments within the Frisbee as to where the different capabilities are, right? For example, data quality. So what we have to be careful of is drifting things like quality into analytics. Yes, they are dependent on it. It's a little bit like if we take the DMBOK, we have the quality knowledge area, right? But everything points to that. All the other areas don't replace that.
Yeah, I think it's an instantiation problem, right? Quality actually sits across all of them.
Sure. Governance sits as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think part of the challenge is that you almost need to superimpose a little demo wheel inside each one of the DCAM Frisbee sections to say, these are the capabilities. Now, you don't have to put all of those capabilities in there, but these are the capabilities. You highlight the ones that specifically are required in that particular Frisbee section. And in the next one, governance will be across all of them. Quality will be across all of them. Security.
No. Look, what will be helpful is actually just to show you some of the different capabilities. Ben may be able to explain it better than I am, but for example, when you've got data management strategy there, it doesn't fit into the data governance. Those capabilities for building the data management strategy and building the business case do not go into data governance. Data governance is about policies and procedures. So where you have to be careful when you walk into the DCAM environment is not to think of data governance as defined by the DMBOK. It's restricted in that situation.
Yeah, what you say is right, Howard. The challenge I run into is that, and I've run into a number of companies, they don't want to implement data management. They just want data governance, in which case data governance has to go and do the data management stuff that wasn't going to be part of data governance specifically.
Okay, let's take that into a different discussion, because what I'm trying to do is just make sense of how that analytics capability is bringing all of this stuff together to help us understand. I mean, it's bringing in data architecture, it's aligning with data quality, and it's aligning with the metadata as well, the data lineage and the data risks and the culture. and it's establishing everything there. Now, then maybe you can provide an answer. If I have a program and a funding model, I'm actually doing the same thing here.
Yeah, something just, and this is just a personal preference, but when it comes to data strategy, I tend to walk backwards from business strategy into data strategy. So you're spending more time 100%. With business stakeholders, who already have a vested interest in data. They just may not know, depending on the literacy, but how to articulate that and how it's used. And so walking backwards from business strategy as opposed to walking up from data management into data strategy.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
I think there's this sort of, and it's every business is completely different. So there's no silver bullet, but that kind of federated governance model versus centralized governance model, can also have a big impact on the change management requirements. It can be seen as a tax on just doing business, depending on how it's been implemented. Some of them are very, like, to use Howard, your comment, application centric, where they've invested heavily in a data governance tool. And so, they've introduced a whole bunch of new process, and that can become inhibiting in just using data to sort of do some analysis and make decisions. So I think, I hope that just helps a little bit with, I tend to try and get to business stakeholders as quickly as possible.
I agree. We really want to talk to our business stakeholders, and the way that Bob Siner put it yesterday is that those people that are using the data, producing the data in the business, those are the ones that can give us that understanding of what's going on and what's needed and what the friction is. And then we can look at how do we take those and create initiatives, data management or data strategy initiatives or use cases that are going to address those challenges. So,
and something I find, just, it's a bit of a hack, but something like Microsoft Excel is ubiquitous, and a lot of business stakeholders are using it every day for analysis. But sometimes I'll use that as, there is actually a spreadsheet based model for the business, and then how do we build some education around, well, how do you know that data's of quality? Who knows about this spreadsheet? So you think about discoverability. You sort of start to tap into data management principles using an example that everybody relates to.
You're right. I had a great engagement at the central bank where they were battling with all of these Excel spreadsheets that had VBA code all over the place. And we found one Excel spreadsheet that the person had forgotten to update the risk rating on one of the models or the portfolios, and that thing hadn't had an update for 6 months. It was 6 months old in the risk rating, and people said this was really dangerous, and the risk was phenomenal that they didn't fall into a hole. So and then we said, guys, can you see the value of master data in this field? Like, if you could just have one single authoritative source where you got the risk ratings for your indexes or your indices, that would have avoided all of this issue. And when they see it, that's when you can start introducing the data management capabilities that they will buy.
They see the value in it.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Just going through, I've mapped just about every single DCAM core area into the DMBOK, and when I did this one for analytics, it scared me in terms of I was basically dealing with all of them, and so that's just an observation. Now, this led me to the next one, is a case of understanding the risk framework, and you can see basically the trustworthiness of AI. It's got to be secure, it's got to be safe, it's got to be explainable, interpretable, it needs to be addressing the privacy, needs to be fair, and we need to have this accountability and transparency. Now, the nice thing about it is that so much of those things that they are asking for are sitting in the DCAM artifacts. Okay, interestingly enough, you're not actually seeing them in the DCAM capabilities, but you're seeing them in the artifacts. So there you can see requirements for model explainability documented in the analytics methodology and the model documentation standards. So when I couldn't find them at all at the capability level, but I could certainly find them at the artifact level with the risks, with the risk management. And that's how I connect the DCAM artifacts to the DMBOK and the risk management framework. Okay. So that's how we bring that one in. So basically, for me, the call to action for our data citizens is that we have to bring this data, reposition this data management as a business discipline that creates value, that we know what the value proposition is. And really the recommendation is that DCAM plays a great enablement to you getting there, to be able to define those capabilities that are important at that business architecture level. Okay. We also need to reframe how we talk about data management. We really should be there about driving value, not just about storing data, creating data, using data, archiving data. It's about how do we drive the value that the business requires? And how do we get this source of economic value creation? So to be able to do that, we need value-driven processes. I refer to it as an area on data value realization. I like to have an extra area, knowledge area. Make sure we speak and align to business, the executives and the stewards. And then, let's get to the point where we can bring this data to have the value through the AI. So the AI system is the one that's going to drive the value, engage with the customer, engage with the stakeholder. That's that front end. That's the connection we have. And in using the data appropriately, it's going to get more value out of it. Yes, Andrew.
I'm just saying, Howard, you're just making my job so much easier and Stephen's on the call as well. I mean, we're advocates, right? And we need to be advocating for a comprehensive, vision for clients. And what you're putting together actually helps us articulate that vision. And it's not DCAM or DMBOK or BizBOK or anything like that.
No.
It's about the package.
Yeah.
It's about the package of things that need to be done to make AI possible. And I really thank you for just to help me clarify my ideas and my, communicating what we do, because we're trying to be advocating for change. And, I just want to give you a shout out for helping clarify my work. And, I'm sure Stephen's going to be saying the same thing as well, but anyway, I just thought I'd,
Thanks.
Anyway.
Thank you, Andrew. Any other questions, comments? I'd love to get your feedback. I know Paul Bolton was interested in that risk framework. Paul, I'm wondering can you see where that comes in?
Yes, thanks, Howard. I haven't been through the framework yet, but yeah, definitely a good position there. Thanks for that. I need it.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially that request that I have from the training I did.
Right. So a lot of the times it's really hard to look at the risk of data when you're not looking at the recommendations, the systems, the things that are the use of the data, that thing that uses the data to drive engagement and value. That's where the risk is sitting. It's sitting at that area. That's when the problems start to come in. And then, of course, I mean, you've got security and data privacy, that if they hack your data, that's another area. But both of those are securities handling that, tech in terms of protecting our data, and then AI is presenting it and driving value on our data.
Awesome. Thanks, Howard. Brilliant.
Great. Anything from you, Ben?
No, nothing important. Nothing in particular. I mean, I'm curious to know. Are you doing a demo of your Graph RAG application?
Yes, I am. That was on the 24th. So.
Oh man, I got to see this.
Yeah, that
sounds like fun.
Yeah, and then I was able to put it together without any coding. There are from the examples you can get the Python and the R code and stuff like that, but basically you can connect it and prove that it's working and then extend it. So
super cool.
yeah. So it would be nice where we can bring a lot of this, the DCAM artifacts, that sort of stuff in, so that we can guide assessments, we can guide things in terms of how this thing works, and people can ask questions about it, and we can bring that thought leadership to them. Anybody else? Any other questions? William, did you get your questions answered?
Yes, I did. Thanks very much. My last comment, I think one of the challenges that we run into when we use the word data, when we're talking to people, some people are stuck on data as stuff. You know, how fast, where do I put it, where do I store it, integration, all that stuff, versus data as meaning, which is actually really what data management is all about, and data quality and all the rest of it. And I don't know how we take this conflated terminology and split it back out. I don't know what word we use. I use the word meaning a lot to try and explain to people I'm not talking about the data as stuff.
The semantics.
Yeah. You know what? I found the word semantics is fine for the more educated people, but it's lost on people in general.
Yeah.
When I talk about meaning, you know, then everybody gets it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think part of the challenge that we're going to run into is that we're going to, especially with AI coming out, we're going to have to tell people your problem is not in the data. Your problem is in the meaning of the data. And we're going to have to bring that message across. I don't know how we do that messaging because, you know, it's like the horse is bolted, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
William, I think, sorry, just something I noticed in William's profile, you know, your articulation of the difference between data and information, I thought was pretty relevant to that sometimes talking about information, which is data with context.
Yeah.
You know, is probably not a bad place. I find that's not a bad place to start, you know, where, and the example I use, and, you know, Howard's sat through rather patiently my DCAM training is the example of, you know, if you said 50 to someone as a data point, they say 50 what, you know, but if I said, well, William, you owe me $50, then the context, because I won the bet, you know, means that there's context around the data point and people start to understand the subtlety there.
That's exactly right.
And I think when the nice thing is I'm sort of setting up a data steward training, and some of them is actually about the important thing is what is our knowledge and understanding of the data. That's where our data stewards have to help us and understand that they are the ones that contribute that to the equation. They are the ones that give us the meaning, the understanding, where it comes from, what happened to it, what does it look like. They are the ones that give us that understanding about the data. Yeah, I got Khalid. Is it Khalid or Masood? Khalid?
Hi. Masood.
Salam alaikum.
Salam alaikum. Walaikum salam. Thank you so much for your presentation, and it's wonderful to see everything. And but I jumped late into the presentation, so I don't know if you have already discussed also about I also don't know, is this a part of data management in this way when controlling is make DQ checks, and are there possibility to make the DQ checks by the data automatically through AI? Is this a possibility or not?
Sorry, won't you just explain? I missed it. Were you talking about the future? I didn't hear you.
This is
it's the quality checks.
Area. Yes, the quality checks.
So is it possible for us to do some of this data quality or data management using AI? Is that the question?
Yes, from my point, I work sometimes together with controlling in banking area, and they make the quality checks, the controlling, and
Yes.
so is this also possible to make directly by AI?
Yeah, so I think we have to move into that field, especially when we talk about streaming data and big data or data lakes, where we can no longer keep up with the pace at which data is coming at us. So I think it is more and more critical that we look to use AI to, as an example, automate the checking of new data sets coming in, trying to get the understanding of what those columns are all about, or rebuild the metadata that you typically have problems with in Excel. Also, then once you've identified the column and its business glossary term, could you apply the data quality rules? Could we classify data? If we see data privacy information, can we automate the classification? So just this today, I was reading about how much we can make use of AI to data management. And what I was talking about earlier on, Khalid, was it's even possible where we bring our policies and procedures into the day-to-day operations of the business. So it's not about, I need to write a Word document and everyone needs to adhere to it, but it's a case of when I'm working with the data, I then have access to the policy and the procedure via an LLM or a chatbot that can help me get better productivity. What should I be doing here? What's the quality rule for this thing? What does this mean? All of that is now becoming accessible to us, and AI is going to enable us to improve the speed at which we do data management. It's not taking away the fundamentals, but it can help us improve the speed at which we do things.
It can also highlight conflict management. So you're busy writing something and you realize that actually you've got conflicting policies, or you've forgotten about one.
Yep.
And the LLM tells you, by the way, you've got this and that. How are you going to reword this? Or give a suggestion or something.
And that's where you pick up the ambiguity that we were talking about, William, is when you and there are certain agents that do that. When you ask an LLM a question, please tell me how to do that. They've actually got agents that stand in front of that and say, well, I'm not sure what you mean. Are you meaning this, or do you mean that, or do you mean this? And it has this conversation with you until it gets the right understanding of the context of how you're using that word, and then it issues it to the ChatGPT and reduces the amount of hallucination that you're getting. I think William went. I think he answered the phone. Khalid, did that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
So we can't ignore it, and we shouldn't be ignoring it in terms of making use of it to improve our productivity from a data management, data governance point of view. Okay. Any last questions? Great. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for all the engagement. Thank you. Thanks so much, Ben, Andrew. Thanks a lot, William. Thank you very much. Cheers, everybody.
Thanks, Howard.
Thanks, everyone.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate that.